The Wisp, Chapter 18. St. Xavier's gates were closed tight, the grounds surrounded by a 10-foot brick wall. The message was clear: keep out. Bara was about to give up when she remembered something Colin had told her. There was a place along the wall where a couple missing bricks and a plum tree on the other side gave nightly access in and out of the grounds. About 50 feet from the gate, a tree just skimmed the top of the wall. Its mauve leaves, onyx in the night, were nearly gone, but dried fruit remained. She went to the tree. Running her hand over the brick, she found the first chink, and then the second. It was the spot. Like she was mounting a horse, Bara fixed a foot in the lowest ledge and propelled herself up. Seriously, how does Colin do this? Her hands sought holes that weren't there, but somehow she clung to the wall. Her other foot found the second ledge. A push in her open palms found the top. One leg swung over, and then the other. The mortar tore at her tights, but she managed, just barely, to climb atop the wall. Now the tree. Colin had neglected to mention it was a good 6 feet away, not much of a jump for him, a serious challenge for her. But the tree was a lot closer than the ground. Bara crouched, gave a silent prayer, and literally took a leap of faith. She fell upon a thick branch like the largest and clumsiest of squirrels and held tight. Then came her descent, which compared to the stunt she'd just performed was a relatively easy one, but it would be the end of her tights. She dusted herself off and set out to find Colin. The wind picked up as Bara made her way across the grounds, rattling noisily through the trees, and so she didn't hear the following footsteps, not until she also felt a rasping breath upon her neck. Her scream was muffled when a hand covered her mouth. Using the little judo she knew, she flipped her attacker, and thud, a tall, thin figure hit the ground. It wasn't Courtney. Had a stick insect and a scarecrow made a baby. Long, wiry limbs topped with a big mop of red hair lay splayed out on the lawn. The stick insect spoke. "Holy fuzz, Bara!" Fear unclouded from her eyes. "Why did you sneak up on me?" Colin rubbed his mistreated rear end. "I was coming to see you when I saw you on the lawn. I'd have called out, but I didn't want to wake up Weasley." Bara laughed. She sat down next to Colin on the lawn, threw back her head, and gave into a fit of giggles. The stress of the night had been so intense, and laughter went a long way in breaking it. Colin laughed too. They both lay down on the grass and howled until the first raindrop fell. Colin stopped and looked at Bara. A smile that had nothing to do with what just happened stole over his face. With her green eyes, pools of emerald in the night, Bara really was quite pretty. Actually, he thought, she's pretty all the time. Something about his gaze made her feel just a little self-conscious, and Bara stopped laughing too. She pulled her coat closer, and not because she was cold. She stood. "Come on, take me to your lair." Colin continued to look up at her. "What are you waiting for? It's cold out here, and it's starting to rain." Dutifully, he came to his feet. "Follow me, my lady." He gave a bow and led the way. Bara watched as Colin scaled the dorm wall and disappeared through a window. Alone on the lawn again, she felt watched. Fortunately, she didn't have to wait too long. He opened the front door and she rushed in. They crept up to the second floor to his empty room. His roommate was still away, and they'd have the place to themselves. She'd never been in his room before. It was neater than she expected. Actually, it was neater than her own. Well, her side at least. Amy was neat, but Bara always had books and clothes littering her desk and floor. She often had to kick a path from door to bed. Colin also had quite a few books, but his were placed neatly in a bookcase or in an orderly pile on his desk. The absent roommate obviously shared her slovenly habits. Random pieces of clothing loafed on his bed, but Colin's still gray bed didn't have a wrinkle. Never mind any dirty clothes. Embarrassed, Colin grabbed a pair of boxers from the other bed and threw them in the closet. Bara chuckled, and then, like she owned the place, she crossed from the door to his bed and plopped herself down. Colin stood awkwardly. Should he join her or sit on the bed opposite? He chose instead his desk chair and pulled it close. "So why did you risk coming here tonight?" he asked. "Why were you coming to see me?" she countered. Colin hesitated. He obviously had a lot to say, but didn't quite have the courage to say it. Not just yet. "You first," he insisted. "Yeah, about that." Now that she thought about it, Bara wasn't certain he'd believe her, but she did need to tell someone. She took a deep breath and just let it come out. "Courtney is Cedric's witch. She's Guinevere." And then she waited. She expected Colin to howl, to make light of her accusation. He didn't even seem surprised. He only nodded and waited for her to go on. "You believe me? Why do you believe me?" "I had a dream." It was her turn to say nothing. She must have looked doubtful. "Apparently, whatever's going on, it's contagious." Bara leaned up against the wall and shook her head. You had a wisp dream too? Really? What happened? Colin didn't want to tell her his whole dream, and so he lied. Well, he didn't really lie, but he didn't tell her everything. He phrased his words carefully. I don't remember it all. Okay, that was a lie. He remembered everything. But Courtney was in the maze. She was standing over you. She had this strange green dagger. It all seemed so real. When I woke up, I had this really strong feeling you were in danger. That's why I was coming to find you. What Colin didn't tell her was that the wisp had been in the dream too. She'd led him to the maze and told him he'd find Bara inside and that Bara needed his help. Once inside, he got lost. He kept catching glimpses of the wisp, and then Bara, but couldn't catch up to either. Eventually, he turned a corner, and there was Courtney. She was dressed in clothes from the 19th century, only her arms were bare. She held a dagger above her head. At her knees was Bara. Colin acted without thinking, propelling himself forward and knocking Courtney to the ground. The dagger flew from her grip and landed on the other side of the hedge. Delivered from danger, Bara fell into his arms. Colin lifted her chin and without hesitation kissed her. And she'd kissed him back. The kiss was reason enough for him not to tell her everything, but what happened next was all the more disturbing. As the kiss increased in passion, Bara transformed in his arms. Her lips became thinner and colder, and she grew tall, almost as tall as him. He opened his eyes to discover he was no longer kissing Bara, but the wisp. Then he'd woken up. Kissing the wisp had made Colin feel he betrayed Bara, and kissing Bara, well, that had made him feel something entirely different. He'd tell her how he felt, eventually, but not now and not because he had some stupid dream. No way. What mattered was that he knew Courtney's secret identity, right? Bara was watching him. There was heat in his cheeks, the color of which no doubt matched his hair. Did you bring the diary? He asked. Bara handed over her bag. Colin took out the diary, found where they left off, and read.
The Wisp is published on Amazon.com. Also available on Amazon is Monsters, Real and Imagined, Tragic, Frightening, and Funny, All Too Brief, a collection of short stories and poetry. Strays, a collection of short stories and philosophical love poems, and Tattoo, Calling All Soldiers Home, a collection of poems in brevity.